Welcome to our Urban Legends podcast. I'm Dr. Gloria McDaniel Hall. I've been a teacher, a principal, and assistant superintendent, all within urban schools in Chicago and around the country. Our Urban Legends podcast is a forum for sharing ideas, strategizing together, and supporting each other as we dismantle the deficit narratives sometimes associated with urban education and discuss where and how amazing work is being done. Welcome to our newest edition of the Urban Legends podcast. As we continue to focus on changing the narrative around our work in urban schools, I am super blessed to be joined by two amazing women who are actually people who've guided me and helped me grow along my own journey in urban education. I've actually had the opportunity to work with both of my guests, and they'll tell you more about that in their introductions. And they'll both also never realize how much they've caused me to grow as we've worked together. To say that I'm proud of each of you would be an understatement, not just proud of what you've accomplished, but so super proud of the evolution that I've witnessed in both of you. We know that right now, the times that we're working in are unprecedented in terms of challenges that school leaders are facing, and even how it's such an uneven impact on our students that we typically work with in urban schools, and how much they've suffered through all that we've had to do as we've instituted these changes in virtual learning and all of that. But I know that through this conversation, school leaders are going to be enlightened and provided with those nuggets of wisdom that you have based on your time in education, specifically in urban education, and your district leadership. So welcome.
So I am Dr. Angel Turner. I have an extensive background in education. I started my teaching career at D.S. Wentworth Elementary School, where I taught middle school English language arts. From there, I transitioned to teach fifth grade at Lionel Hampton Fine and Performing Arts School, which is on the southwest side of Chicago. After teaching at Lionel Hampton, I realized I wanted to go into leadership. And so I was afforded the awesome opportunity to become the assistant principal at CICS Basel under the leadership of Dr. Hall, where we had an awesome time just really moving the needle as it relates to really improving student outcomes for students who live in the Inglewood community. And I shifted from there to becoming the assistant principal. I was the founding assistant principal at Collins Academy High School, where I had the opportunity to work under an awesome leader as well. Learned a lot from Joyce Kane. And after doing that, I transitioned to becoming a school leader. And so I was the proud principal of Morton School of Excellence on the West Side. And from that role, I transitioned and had the opportunity to be a district level leader. And I served as a director of school leadership for the Academy for Urban School Leadership for many, many years. I transitioned from there and went and worked at another educational nonprofit. And now I am the director of literacy at Everson Skokie School District 65. And so I have a wealth of experience. I've been in education over 20 years, and I just enjoy what I do. I enjoy helping teachers, students, families, leaders, and it's just a great experience.
That is amazing, Angel. I can't believe we both started at Wentworth. It's such a small world. Okay. It is. Dr. Williams?
Well, wow, that 20, and I think about, this is my 38th year in education. So wow. I could say that I'm a lifelong educator. And what's interesting is when I was a child, I never really saw myself as a teacher or an educator. And so, however, I knew that my teachers loved me, and they always encouraged me to go in that route, never knowing that I actually would. However, this 38-year journey, of course, I started off in the classroom with CPS back in the mid 80s. So that was a long time ago. And then, of course, I left because it was a very different CPS then. And I started teaching in the parochial school. Did that for 10 years. And then I knew that it was time for me to get back into public education. And so my segue back into public was to start with the charters. And so I too had the wonderful privilege to work with Dr. Hall as a team leader or assistant principal at CICS Prairie. And I was there for a couple of years. And that was when she told me, okay, it's time for the eaglet to get out the nest. And so that was when I became the director or principal at CICS Washington Park and was there for several years and ascended, you know, in the charter organization. And then I came back to Chicago Public Schools as chief area officer. And then with each CEO, the name became something different. And then it was a network chief. And that was when networks had names. So I stayed there in those two capacities and then went to central office as the executive director of instructional supports. And that was really a telling experience real quickly. It was just because I didn't realize that there were so many high school students and so many students in our city that were either on the verge of failing or who were failing. And so that became my mission to really think about what we should try to do to save those students to where they found hope in education. And so after I left there, I became a consultant and coach, a leadership coach at Teach for America and a couple of other organizations. And now I'm currently a statewide facilitator for the Illinois Principals Association, as well as an adjunct professor at National Louis, where Dr. Hall and I are still connected.
The connections are amazing. The connections are amazing.
Yes, and so it's just been so rewarding to have lasted this long and to be relevant to where you get on this side and you have a lot to offer people. So thank you for that space.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the cool thing about the journey that all three of us have taken is that it's a mix of experience in the research, because we've done like both, because you can't teach about something you haven't done, and you could do research all day, but until you've done that in the trenches work that you both described, it's just not the same. So thinking about especially your experiences in urban schools, why do you think having a forum like this to be able to talk about best practice is important? Like, what do you think is important about these kinds of conversations, and what could a potential someone who's thinking about school leadership?
I think still remaining positive and hopeful, even amidst all of the chaos that's going on in the world, in various communities. I think this is a fantastic platform to really start examining issues of equity. And when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, what does that really look like in urban education? Because we can theorize, however, until we do real deep dives into various communities and really include the people who it involves most in the conversation to see what those needs are, because each one is unique. And as you know, urban education, it's such a broad stroke of what we could be discussing. It's just, I think, restoring hope and really examining, when we say equity, diversity, and inclusion, what does that actually mean? And how do we engage the very people that we say we're supporting through education with that?
That's cool. Angel, you're mute, sweetie.
I'm sorry. I would totally agree with that. I think we're right now, we're in a space of, it's a heightened level where we are right now in terms of education. And so this idea of reinventing school is really where we need to go, right? Like, the reality is these last, and now it's really a little bit over 2 years that we've been engaged in a pandemic, right? School cannot just be done business as usual, right? Like, I think this is the perfect opportunity for us to really pause and really think about how we need to really reinvent school and how we need to really reinvent how we do school and help children do school, right? And help adults do school, right? I think what we've noticed coming, being involved in this pandemic and just experiencing what we've experienced and continue to experience these past 2 years is that mental health is at an all-time high. And it's not just at an all-time high for children, it's at an all-time high for adults. And this is the perfect opportunity for us to really think about this idea around health and wellness, this idea around really thinking about leveraging what we've experienced these past 2 years and being thoughtful around how we shape or mold school moving forward, right? Because I just sit back and I think about this generation of children that has experienced what they've experienced the past 2 years. And I think about this essentially is a generation that ultimately will at some point have to take care of us in, years to come. And so if we don't really get a hold of how to really share these type of experiences and help people to really navigate through some of the challenges, or how to just really redo or rethink how we have done things in the past, it's going to get pretty scary in terms of what we will have to look forward to in the future. So allowing these opportunities to really share the real experience of what is really happening at this time is just a perfect opportunity for us to really help to shape and mold and continue to encourage people that we need people, instead of people exiting the field of education,
Yes.
we need more people entering the field of education, because we're at this all-time high where the need is probably greater now than it probably has ever been in history past.
Yes. And so in each of the situations where we work together, as you guys were both just talking, I was thinking about the challenges. So when we got to Basel, it was academic scores in the 20% in reading and math on the Illinois state test. It was children's behavior and suspensions and all these social needs. It wasn't the same at Prairie just because we built that together. Like we started at the K3 and then we grew by grade. But in both situations, there were challenges that come along with the high free and reduced numbers that it was almost 100%. The fact that we needed to help parents and bring them in to be partners with us, and how to make that happen. Because at Prairie, 50% of the parents were Latinx and 50% African American and at Basel it was like 100%. So we had the challenges that the research talks about, but somehow they were happy places. What do you think? Like, and even in terms of what Angel just spoke to, and in terms of what we're dealing with mental health after the pandemic, but what are the keys that you feel like were in place that helped us to be able to overcome some of those challenges that sometimes are just too much for people, and that's why people are exiting?
I really believe that people felt safe, emotionally safe, intellectually safe, and physically safe. And I think just having that as the groundwork caused people to believe that we really meant what we said when we would say, we care about you and your family. Like you mentioned, reaching out to provide parents and the community opportunities to come into the school and really become a part of what that looked like. I have to say, teachers were very committed to, and I don't know if it was simply because it was required. However, there was this family type spirit within the community and the school. Even among the different groups of students, the ethnic groups, there was still this camaraderie that developed because they were always doing something together, even though, of course, because the school was located in the more dominant Latinx area. Of course, there were some things that were very unique to the actual neighborhood. However, I really do believe that people who worked in the school, so that was every level, teachers all the way to the security guard, everyone felt that this was a great place. It was familial, and there was trust there.
For sure, for sure. I think I always reflect just back on my time at Basil, and then my time when, when I was the assistant principal at Collins, and then even when I became the principal of Morton. All of my experience have been working really majority in high poverty communities. And I think about the core aspects of really what really brought us together. And I agree with Dr. Williams. Safety was key, right? Like, even though those schools were located in some very challenging communities, one thing you can rest assured was that the school was the safest place for students, right? And it was the safest place for students because it had a group of adults who really cared about kids, had genuine relationships with not just students, but families, right? Because it went beyond just the kids we interacted with. It reached out into the families that we supported and the communities that we served. And it was just a family atmosphere, right? I just think about my time when I was the principal at Morton. That building was open 7 days a week, right? And it was because, and I'm talking, I had young teachers, I had teachers from all walks of life, right? Some who had children, some who didn't, but the level of commitment that they put in to making sure and working, like, I had a very strong belief that I had the absolute best teachers in the city of Chicago. And because I empowered teachers to believe that, there was nothing they did not want to do to really live up to that expectation. And so when it meant staying late, or having that building open 7 days a week, or even after teaching after school, still staying with kids to 6 and 7 o'clock in the evening, or providing 3 meals for the kids we know probably wouldn't receive dinner that evening. Like, they were committed to that, right? Like, I didn't have to ask or beg. They had just as much buy-in as I did to really ensuring that kids that sat in front of them every day were going to be successful. And so I just think, I always reflect back, I'm like, we're dealing with some tough challenges now, but I've dealt with some tough stuff from the communities that I've served. And the level of resilience, the level of grit, the level of perseverance that the adults did was just amazing. And so I just often wonder, like, how do we keep that? Like, how do we refuel that? Because right now I think everybody is just overwhelmed. I think everybody is burnt out. I think it's a lot. I do think that people, their heart is still genuine. I just think it's just the situation and the demands of what we're facing now that is really, it's wiping people out. And it's unfortunate. My prayer is that people start to get refueled back to really doing this work, and they don't get to a point where it's just, they want to just come completely out the field. And that's the part that just saddens me, to be very honest.
That is so true. But like what you guys just mentioned, in terms of making people feel safe, making people feel heard, what equity looks like when you actually do it. Like, so all the teachers that I'm working with through National Lewis who are in leadership training, like 90% of the people speak to the fact that no one is listening to them and what their needs are. And so like we're getting messages from above us as to what we need to do. And in Chicago it's all over the news in terms of what we need to do in our buildings. But still, I think there are things like, as a leader on the ground with your people, if you make your people feel like they're safe or that they can speak to you,
for sure,
it's a different atmosphere. And I know it's scary, and we would all be scared together, but you can't do it without engaging the people who you're making decisions for. You can't do it
For
without
sure.
talking to parents. They get news about what's happening at school by listening to Channel 7, and that's not how they should be getting the
Mhm.
news about what's going to happen in their buildings. One of the other things that, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
One of the other things that I really want to get to is this lack of teachers that you brought up, Turner, because right now people aren't seeking to join our profession, and they certainly aren't, oh, I can't wait to teach at a school in a high poverty neighborhood. I think that when you get the right leader, you get them in the school, you could get these teachers and you can give them the supports that they need. But from everything that people are hearing, like on the news or seeing, nobody really wants to do this anymore.
Right.
So if there were messages that you could give to people who really care and people who want to do this work, about not only the challenges, but like how fulfilling it could be working in urban schools. Because it is. I felt like I was making a difference when I did that work. What would those messages be to people who might be considering becoming teachers?
Yeah. First of all, you would be helping the segments of our society that need you the most. And I think there's just something innately fulfilling about going where the need is the greatest. Because in those schools where the performance is so low, well, the only place you can go is up. And, you know, as a school leader and as teachers, then that success is attributed to something in your secret sauce that's helping them to get that way. I also think that when you are really focused on building relationships, and those relationships come out of really understanding your why, and that changes. However, being really clear on why would you want to, or why would you not want to become a teacher or a school leader or principal or AP. It's very hard work, but then that's the most rewarding work too. When you really get to see that authentic change, or when you know that you have been a positive impact on someone's life. And when your students begin to see that they really do bring a lot to contribute, and that no matter what their life is outside of school, here's a place where they can be successful. Even with teachers, here's a place where I can grow and be successful. And I have my administrators who are investing in me, ensuring that I have what I need to grow and become the best teacher, possible. I think it's related from, not to say the top to, but it's a through line that when everyone believes that, and you have these opportunities, then that's where, I would really encourage people to continue to keep, as Jesse Jackson used to say, keep hope alive.
Keep hope alive. That's what the whole podcast is about.
Because, and this isn't cliche, our children are our future. And if there's no one, especially that looks like them, to help create these conditions for them to go on and be successful, then it's such a disservice to our children in urban education.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have really strong beliefs around what makes schools really great, right? And the belief that's the strongest for me is I strongly believe that great schools are built on strong leadership. And and considering that what leaders are really being faced with today, it's making it really hard for them to do the work. Like, you'll see leaders that were really rocking it out, that were strong. They're losing the momentum. They're losing all of the energy and excitement that they once possessed because of the bureaucracy and the politics that they have to fight and play with every day. And so if I had to, I think a lot of times we focus all of our energy on, and we have always used this idea around putting students first and students being at the center. But at some point, we're going to have to align that with also putting adults first, right? Because we're going to continue to keep losing people if we as adults just don't figure out and some very important things that we need to do. And so one of the things I think is important that there's going to have to be this level of prioritization that leaders really need to hone in on, right? And so when I think about prioritization, really distinguishing and getting a hold of what is urgent versus important, right? And so really leaning into this aspect of, I'm going to focus on these 3 things or these priorities, or like this is what I'm going to give 110% to, so that when the urgent stuff really starts to bubble up, if it doesn't fit in these things that I've identified as important, then I'm either not going to entertain it, or 2, figure out within the important stuff where that could potentially fit in and how I need to prioritize the time around it, right? I think the second thing is really this idea around work-life balance, right? Like if I often hear leaders tell teachers, oh, go home, spend time with your family, cut it off, but they don't do a good job of modeling that themselves. So start putting your money where your mouth is, right? Like prioritize your daily schedule, your weekly schedule, to focus on the important stuff so that you can, while you're at work, so that you can be a wife and a mom and an aunt, a cousin, a sister. Because again, what we do know is that what we're living in right now is taking people's lives away quite rapidly. And you don't want to have to look back and say, I should have done some things differently. Like now is the time to really think about how to readjust and really consider this work-life balance. And I think the last thing is that when we think about, when we put those things in place and we think about like really trying to encourage people or encourage teachers to like continue to stay the course or to get in this field, like I think teachers need to understand that they're really the secret sauce and really closing the gap, right? Like they are the ones in terms of really making a difference in kids' lives and really being able to do what they or provide them with what they need. And so sometimes I think they don't realize that because you don't immediately see the fruits of your labor. But if you stay the course, just know that you know it might take a little bit for that seed to kind of flourish and prosper and grow into a plant, but do know that, you know, like the work you're putting into it, and I would say this for school leaders and for teachers, like it's not going unnoticed, and that they are appreciated. And I think oftentimes we just don't share gratitude. We don't
celebrate,
do those celebrations, just refuel people, because we know that this work is hard. That is true, but also thinking about how to just revitalize it and revitalize each other, I think is extremely important.
Well, one other thing I think is really key too, even though you have like either mandates, requirements, parameters, the beauty about having a classroom is you get to create whatever that environment is. So there's still a lot of autonomy, even with all the boxes that have to be checked and all of that. You still get to be creative and to just, you know, bring the students in as a part of it and create this school community, this classroom community rather, so that all of the students feel like they're a part. And who best to do that than the teacher, because they know every single child that's represented there. And I still feel that way about even school leaders, because right now I'm coaching a number of principals, and it's the same thing. As a school leader, you get to create the type of environment that will cause your people to flourish and then to develop other leaders, because that's the true sign of a leader, one who develops other leaders, creating those opportunities so that they do feel seen and that their hard work is recognized, because now it opens them up for other opportunities as well. So
yeah, and I would agree, just like we want principals to do that for teachers. I would also encourage principal managers to do that for principals too.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like they have to be, they have to also be refueled and encouraged and motivated and celebrated too. And I think oftentimes the expectation is when you get in that principal role,
you don't need
you're
it
responsible.
anymore.
You don't need it anymore. But I like to tell people all the time, adults are just like kids. We need that too, to keep us kind of continue to stay the course. And so if I had to give a word out there to the principal managers and principal supervisors, I would definitely say, be intentional around how you celebrate these leaders. If you haven't done it before, it's even more important to do it now, because it'll be a ripple effect on how they then demonstrate that with their staff. And then how teachers then demonstrate that with kids.
So typically, I know we could do this for like 10 more hours, but typically I end with a quote by somebody. I just changed my mind while you guys were talking, and I want you to give us a quote to take us out, each of you. Just think of something. What is, like, if you could say, like, this is a quote from me that's going to give hope to this whole situation.
Yeah, my quote the quote that I have been using is this quote, go slow to go fast, right? Like, we can't do it all, right? But if we prioritize around the things that are most important and stay the course around those things, as we start to get traction and get the systems and structures in place for those particular things, then we can continue to add additional things until we're in a space where we have a pretty well system. And I think right now we're operating in a space where we're just all over the place. Like, we're trying to do everything and nothing is getting done. And we're trying to do it fast. You know what I mean? And nothing is getting done. So if I had to give any advice, it would definitely be go slow to go fast.
Okay, what do you have for us, Dr. Williams? Take us out.
Fight for margins in your life. Fight for margin, because of the fact, as Dr. Turner said, you know, we've got so many competing and sometimes conflicting priorities, and it can consume you. And, you know, just going through this couple of years and seeing, you know, that for some teachers, coming to that classroom every day was their solace. That was, they were getting away from some things themselves. And I was on a few Zoom calls where I saw some of the manifestations of things that were happening at home that the principal never knew, because when that teacher showed up, they were smiling, it was, you know, they were on. And so I would just say, you know, to fight for margin, because with everything going on, as you mentioned earlier, we don't know how much time we have. And, you know, our days are so full and running over, and you have to preserve some space for yourself, because again, self-care, and I don't mean that in the selfish way. However, you have to know when you're not okay, and you have to be able to share that and maybe identify some resources to where you can get the support that you need.
Yes.
And also to protect your family time. And as I say this, I'm always reminded I have to be very mindful of these things too, like you said. And then also whatever feeds you spiritually. So we're looking at every aspect of who you are. Make sure that you fight for some margin in every aspect of your life, because then you get to show up as a better person And then people begin to really see you walk that walk. When you tell them, oh, take some time with your family, when they see you model those things, then they begin to believe you. And right now, it just seems like people are really looking for people or things to believe in. So we have to model the way as leaders and as teachers to make that positive impact.
Thank you all so much. We need to open our own school.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how awesome. I just got so many ideas from speaking with you guys right now. So thank you so much. And I will see you soon.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Well, yes, this was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.